Hey there, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. With limited Russian 3-day special military operation to conquer Ukraine now going into its 5th year, we have a bit of silver lining by starting it off with a very nice video. It's going to be a very pleasurable video for me to make and for you to hear, because we have only great news for Ukraine and we have a lot of really bad news for Russia. We're going to start by looking at the Frontline update, because news from Frontlines are really great and they are not very good for Russia. And after that, we're going to talk about what Ukraine is able to achieve beyond the front lines. Let's begin. With Ukraine conducting counteroffensive operations in the south and information from there being quite limited, it's always nice to hear more details on Ukrainian advances. And while Ukrainians are counterattacking on a lot of different directions, the information that we got for today is painting quite a grim picture for the Russian outlook of their operation. Because this is happening right over here. This is where Russians were attacking during the latest attempts towards Huliaipole, and they were trying to push very extensively in this direction and essentially wanted to take over all of this area. And this is where Ukrainians have been conducting their counteroffensive operations. And now we actually have some understanding of the scale of Ukrainian counterattacks as they were revealed. So we knew already that Ukrainians have been contesting a lot of gray zone areas, but also now we have confirmations of Ukrainians going in depth into the, as you can see here on the map, quote-unquote, Russian-controlled territory. It is clear that Ukrainians have been attacking in depth towards Novomykolaivka from Ternove in these areas. They have been also attacking from Solotke and Pershotravneve, and they are also pushing from north to Novogrigorivka, which is located over here. Ukrainians have been confirmed operating on territory that is technically controlled by Russians. And all of the reports are suggesting that Ukrainians are not stopping, and potentially the videos and confirmations that we saw are actually quite old. So this is pretty bad for Russia, because this is where a couple of Russian command armies are having like a chain of different responsibility of the front lines. And this is where one of these Russian armies as a military unit, they are having trouble containing this Ukrainian push. Now, Ukrainians are continuing being very careful in their wording. They're stating that this is not counteroffensive action, that this is just Ukrainians that are kind of like slowly exploiting the weakness in the Russian posture. So that's why I'm not yet calling this full-blown counteroffensive. However, it is clear what Ukrainian plan is. The plan is to get to this hub of multiple settlements right over here. Because if Ukrainians are able to carve up essentially this area right over here, this creates a big, very massive salient in depth of the Russian counterattacking forces. Because let's zoom out here for a second. As I just mentioned, Russians are trying to attack Huliaipole, Zaliznichne, and Ternuvate, which is located right over here. And they're doing this by attacking from east to west, basically this direction. What Ukrainians are doing here is they're basically creating this big old salient that would allow them to flank attack the Russians and potentially undercut this whole operation altogether, creating a massive victory for Ukrainians and undercutting, I would say this is at least 2 years of Russian operations. And so far, nothing is indicating that Russians are able to stop it. So the fact that we're seeing proofs of Ukrainians already advancing in depth with a clear understanding what they want to achieve, for me, paints a picture that Ukrainians are knowing what is happening, they are exploiting Russian weaknesses, and they have found the weak spot where Russians are trying to attack, but they're not able to. That is the outlook. Again, I don't want to overhype it just so we don't get into the expectations that we will not achieve. But from what we are seeing, it is really bad news for Russia. Incredibly bad. Terrible even. This can be in absolute devastation. And in worst case scenario, it can actually lead to Ukrainians open up a potential hole in the whole Russian defensive line. And after that, a lot of things can happen. But it's important here to also to underscore the other point that Russia still has reserves. So one of the, not just one, but couple of military analysts have been explaining the situation and stating that what Ukraine can hope here is they can hope to undercut Russian planning. So Russia clearly right now wants to plan for the summer campaign when the temperatures become warmer, when the ground hardens up, and then they can use forces to attack on the parts of Frontline where they would like to achieve the goals that they find strategic, such as, for example, to Kramatorsk, Sloviansk. We talked about this extensively. And this is where Russia is preparing certain reserves, and they would like to put these reserves in action on this direction. However, these reserves right now are still just being prepared. They are not ready yet. So Ukrainians right now are exploiting the current situation on the Russian front line, that the forces that Russia used to attack were not adequate to also hold against Ukrainian counterattacks. And potentially this could lead to a situation where Ukrainian continuing breakthrough will potentially endanger this whole southern front line. In which case, Russia will be forced to essentially get a lot of these forces that it was preparing in the back, preparing for the summer offensive campaign, and send them to this direction instead to try to stop the Ukrainian approach, which will inevitably undermine the whole Russian plan for the summer campaign, which is an absolute disaster for the Russia in a strategic sense, because it has already been kind of dubious whether or not Russia will be able to achieve something in summer, because Ukrainians have been defending quite well. But if Ukraine right now is taking over initiative and forcing Russian hands to redeploy some of these reserves that it has been preparing, well then, Russia will be again in a catch-up position, and this is not something that they want to be at, as this is pretty much not achieving Putin that military magical propaganda narrative that Russia is winning so hard and is about to crush Ukraine. It is worth noting that while Ukraine is attacking here and having major success that has been confirmed, there has been also other counterattacks by Ukraine in other directions here in the south. However, Russia is still also counterattacking and pushing a little bit around the area of Mirnograd, and most importantly, they're pushing towards the east around the Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, Soledar line. However, it is all going very, very slow for Russia, and Ukrainians are also trying to undermine Russian operations there. But the southern area of operations for Russia can really be this weak chain that could sabotage all of the Russian plans going forward. So we will see how this will be developing. Ukrainian officials are still being pretty silent on their operations, but from what we're seeing right now, Ukraine is extremely successful and Russia is facing down tougher choices. Another news that I feel is a little bit underreported in their significance is that Ukrainians have used Flamingo missiles to launch deep into the Russia-controlled territory, over 800 miles into the depth of Russia, which is over 1,000 kilometers. And to put it into perspective, Udmurtia is located right over here. And Ukraine basically somewhere from inside the country just basically launched the missiles all the way towards Udmurtia to then have the explosion over there in the production facility. And this production facility is actually quite important. It's a whole area. All the buildings that you see here, like all of these over here, they are producing Russian ballistic and cruise missiles. This is probably the most important production facility inside of Russia, period. This is where all of the Russian power is located. This includes the tactical ballistic and cruise missiles, and it also includes intercontinental ballistic missiles. And the most important part here is that it was struck very precisely. So, couple of very important points that are not being reported, but it's very crucial. Firstly, the nature of the damage. So here we see that this is a big hall of this one building. It is turned out to be the building in which it was the engines for these missiles. Very notably, engines is something that Russia is struggling to build on their own very much for a lot of the missiles. But in this area, this is where the engines were produced for Russia. Specifically, they were covering them with special coatings, preparing all of the engravings that they need, like the fine-tuning that allows the engine to be from like a hulk of metal to become an actual finished product that can actually operate and do stuff. And the nature of the damages, firstly, huge hole, by the way, like it's a hole 24 by 30 meters. That is a lot. It's a big hole. But more importantly, this is hole that has been created based by the nature of the damage from the inside explosion. So what happened is Flamingo missile flew into this building, it crashed through the roof with a specific time detonator and then exploded inside of the building. So, and then part of the roof collapsed in because of that internal explosion. After this internal explosion, there was also fire inside of the building. And this is critical. That means that these missiles, Flamingo missiles, that are carrying about 1 ton of explosive material, were able to strike these Russian facilities by striking into them. And this is critical because while we've seen Ukraine reach on this distance some of the facilities of Russia, this was done by drones. Drones, they don't have, first and foremost, such a big explosive weight. They usually would have maybe 100 to 200 kilos as explosives. But more importantly, if you know anything about physics, you know that drones, they cannot penetrate and then explode. Drones are striking the building and exploding outwards, and only part of that kinetic energy actually goes into the building. If you're able to get into the building and explode inside, that is a completely different nature of damages. And this is why Flamingo missiles that are able to do this is a massive new difference, because while the hole is 24 by 30, huge by itself already, what is inside most likely is gone. It's done for. So now, while Ukraine struck pretty much only one part of this whole area of operations where they are doing a lot of these works on different parts of these missiles and then assembling them together, without engines works that Russia is struggling with, and we know that they're able to do it only because they're able to sneakily import the equipment and specialists from outside of Russia. Now they're gonna have the full blockade of production of their missiles. This is a major game changer for Ukraine. This is something that needs to be underscored, just how bad news it is for Russia, because Russia has used to creating these facilities that are ultra concentrated, that are able to produce a lot of stuff concentrated in one place. And now with Ukraine able to strike them, that is really bad news for Russia. And finally, I want to say thanks to continuing supporting the fundraiser that is ongoing. I know that you and myself, I would also wish that this war would be already over and we would continue our own peaceful life doing something, yet this is where we are. So thank you for caring about Ukraine and continuing the support. This is very relevant and important to do. But more importantly, as you know, I came back from the east where I was in Kramatorsk, Sloviansk, and I was visiting the 93rd Brigade. And from the 93rd Brigade, from the guys at the front line, I got this flag that I will be raffling right now under this video. So if you want to participate in raffle, leave a comment Any comment will do. If you want to say Slava Ukraini, Ukraine matters, that would be great as well. In any case, whatever you say, I will be just choosing one random person tomorrow at the 24th of February at night to sort of commemorate the 5th year of the Russian full-scale invasion, and I will be sending out this flag to one lucky person. In any case, thank you so much for watching. I love you. Slava Ukraini, and I will see you next time. Hey guys, this is a little bit behind the scenes. You're probably gonna see the video of us getting the Starlinks and Bamboo Labs unpacked here. I'm here with the bankomat. Or ATM actually. I was like, what is bankomat in English? And I was like, man, it's hard to remember. It was ATM. It's the ATM. So we just filmed the video about this, and it was such a pleasure. Like all of these days, just stay with the brigade, talk to you, talk to the other guys, and how much you're doing here for Ukraine. It's truly fantastic. I want to say just personally that everyone I know that is watching me, that is subscribed to me, they are all in pain for Ukraine, and they really want to help, and we're trying to do our best. So I want to say a huge thank you from heart to you all for all of your effort here and so on. And it's been my pleasure that you received me so warmly. And guys, like, I'm gonna show you something, but I cannot show you everything because of the secrecy, and well, you know. So huge thanks from everyone.
Thank you for
really
that you support us, support Ukraine.
Yeah.
And we will win, and all Ukraine.
We'll definitely win for sure.
Так кожного разу, коли комбат приїжджає. Здавати треба.
Hey there, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. I'm here specially with the representative of the 93rd Brigade's Black Raven Battalion.
Kosan
Bankomat. It's been a pleasure. I'm pretty sure you've known this person before. He appeared in the last video I did. But I want to give you an update directly. I'm sure you haven't thought that you will see me here. But I'm visiting east of Ukraine, Kramatorsk, and I'm checking out the special deliveries that we're doing right now. We've delivered Starlinks, many of them, which is, by the way, Russians are now going to be very jealous about. And there's going to be additional printers here delivered as well. All of these, I think, super relevant, but I'll give a word to actually talk about this more to you.
Друзі, я хотів від імені батальйону безпілотних систем Black Raven подякувати фонду Лапки Дзиги і сказати просто одне просте, але дуже-дуже важливе слово. Дякую. Я знаю, що назва фонду пішла від імені собаки Дзига, від її лапки, яку вона випадково поставила на формі, яку потім відправили військовому. Хотів би сказати, що хай цей такий дуже символічний логотип стане проявом того, що ви допомагаєте не тільки реальну силу нам проявляти, але й даруєте нам дуже теплу і ту турботу, і цю лапу, яка нам допомагає берегти нашу землю і знищувати ворога.
And I want to say that Ukraine Matters community is working hard, and we will continue working hard with even participating so close. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Ukraine Matters, Slava Ukraini!
Героям слава!